We had been talking about the
Okay, we're rolling.
honeymoon to just get background stuff there, but we had left off with you guys with the sweet mate saying, watch out, she dates them and leaves them. And I said, okay. So,
Alright.
I also I have other questions. I can give you a bunch of questions that you can just say, oh, let's do this one next, or I can.
I want to
should just ask
continue.
about,
I want to continue this.
Yeah.
The, what are you looking for? What were you
Oh,
looking
yeah.
for?
Oh yes.
We have
We'll
quality
definitely come back to that
needs.
one.
Okay. So to add on to the very first, you can't call it a first date because it wasn't a date because it wasn't planned as a date between him and me. But it turned out to be the first date because of the way the evening ended. But at the end of that evening that we were at the Suds factory, and I came back with David, as well as all the other people I went with, we had, by the time that evening was over at 2 o'clock a.m. or whenever we were finished talking at the gazebo, I had in my mind already decided that the person that I was saving my kiss for would be my spouse. And so by the time I got back to my dorm with David and kissed him, I already knew then, which is kind of wacky, that that was the person that I was going to marry. It just felt right.
After our conversation at the gazebo and spending the night together, we
No,
knew.
no, evening. We didn't spend the night together. Young years, while listening, watching, whatever.
Evening, night. They called me Ova. Ova night. Okay. We knew. We knew at that moment that we were going to get married, and that was it. There was no one else.
We never fought. We never broke up. We never.
There was one time when Mary Jo came over, and again those words from Kurt still kind of rang in my ears about, love him and leave him and all that. And there was one time when Mary Jo came over, and I was in the middle of studying in the dorm, and she buzzed me on down, and I said, oh great, she's gonna dump me, and she just basically came over to say, hi, I missed you. I love you,
And I needed a hug because I was.
And I needed a hug, and that was really the only time that there was a question in my mind that maybe this wasn't going to last. But other than that, even we'll save that for another question.
But it was, Kim has asked us. She said, well, when did you know? It's like, okay, as hokey as this sounds, the first date we knew, the first time, it was
romantic.
It rather was, because it was a nice clear evening. It was it wasn't cold, but we were both comfortable, and it was easy enough to be outside for that length of time talking.
I remember the stars as we walked back.
Yeah.
It was a clear night.
Yeah.
But it was just so comfortable. It was so comfortable.
We fit.
Yeah.
Just immediately connected and
Mm-hmm.
able to cover a lot of ground in a short amount of time.
What was interesting, to go back to how my interest in David, and before that, there was this girl in my dorm who was very interested in David, and she kept on telling me, go and find out about him. You're both spiritual life reps. Go and find out. Tell me, give me the dirt on him. Tell me what you know. Tell me, what does he like? What kinds of things does he do, and everything. And so I did actually talk to him about those things, but I was gathering information for myself, not for her. And that was all before this Suds Factory date, non-date. So I felt very bad for her. I felt bad because I was telling her things that and later on, like several weeks later, I had to say, David and I are dating.
Well, and I'll add a story to that too, and that is that in the summertime, when she came up to Ludington with her parents for vacation, Ludington was a good vacation area and all that there from the Detroit area. At that time when they came up to visit, they took me out to lunch, dinner after church, and sure, let's go. I enjoy spending time with folks and going out to dinner and all that. So we went out, and at that time, Denise asked me if I would escort her to a wedding in September, and this was September. And I said, sure, I'll escort you to a wedding in September.
Because he was
Well,
unattached and had nobody. And
all of a sudden, we have our little gazebo adventure, and we truly fall in love with each other. And I'm going like, well, gee, you know, you know, it's obvious that Denise likes me, but I don't return that feeling to her. So what do? Do I take her to the wedding or do I not? And the choice became even more difficult because someone offered me free tickets to the Michigan football game the same Saturday as the wedding. What's a guy to do? I called Denise up. I said, sorry, I can't take you to the wedding, and I took Mary Jo to the football game. The only Michigan football game she's ever been to. I was a real jerk. Thanks very much. I was wrong to do that and to back out on a commitment like that. And you know, Denise took it hard. And
she did. She
Mary Jo
pretty much didn't talk to me much
for a while. And of course, since that time, Denise has found her spouse, and
she did.
yeah, and
She
we
was
and
single
we
for at least
became
10 years.
she was single for a long time, but we became good friends. You know, the animosity did not last, and all that as far as a long-term thing is concerned. But yeah, I didn't do that right. That was one of the things that I'm not. I was a jerk. I was a heel. Okay, let's all say it together. Yeah, that kind of closes the loop on that story.
Right.
Okay, you said you guys never broke up.
Never broke
anything
up.
like that.
No.
We never broke up. You know, I'm sure there were disagreements and whatnot. But that was the only year we were together.
The biggest
Ah.
disagreement was revolved around the fact that I was a good student, and someone else was not.
Hey,
Those 2 years at Ann Arbor.
you were studious and you studied nonstop. And he would ask me for a date, and it was a library date. And he said, you know, let's meet in the library. And I thought, let's meet in the library and we'll pretend to study, but really we'll, you know, just chat. Well, he intended to study. And he'd get testy with me because I was talking to him all the time. I was like, well, I had some work with me, but I sure never intended to do it. This was a date. But his idea of a date in the library, he was really going to actually study. So that was contentious a few times.
A little bit.
Because I just wanted to spend time with you.
Yeah, but with Greek and Hebrew and all that, you just got to stick with it and keep it up, and music was very time consuming as well, as far as the classes and the practicing and all that. So
You worked on campus too in music.
and I worked in the music office as well, so I was a busy guy. There's no question about that.
And he was still Mr. Popularity on campus. And I was still just Mary Jo. And I remember feeling that way. It would be like, oh, David and his music and organ and directing, because you were director of various
Chapel
things,
thing,
chapel
yeah.
and choir ensemble type things and all kinds of stuff. And I was just me. I had no musical skills. I was just little Mary Jo. So in his big music circles of people, I would just kind of stand there and look pretty, stand by his side and go, yep, he's mine. Y'all can be jealous if you want, but he can talk music with you all, but he's mine.
That reminds me of one of the questions that you wanted to ask us about Aaron. Yeah, if you're thinking the same thing I'm
meeting
thinking.
each ideal spouse
Yeah.
qualities.
What's that qualities of that ideal
Yes.
spouse?
Or what
Yeah.
sort of ideas did you have?
Well,
about
my
what would be
ideal
your
spouse.
Ideal person.
Yeah, my ideal spouse is going to be musical.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and my ideal spouse would be athletic as well.
Yes.
And that we would fit, you know, that we would fit physically and spiritually and emotionally and all that too. But I think it's
Big loser on this end.
but
on
you
the
know,
athletic
no,
and the
not at
music
all, not at
part.
all, because she listened to me practice, and she turned my pages for me, you know, at the organ. And as far as athletic is concerned, I would put her right up against the brick wall of the dorm.
He put a
and
ball glove on my hand.
And put a ball glove on her hand, and then I would pitch fast pitch and make her catch my pitching.
And I had never caught any kind of ball with a glove on my hand
And
before.
she did wonderfully well.
Yeah,
she
like
was
this.
great. Yeah, it was all self-defense.
and like this. And like this, and then I would go, I am not doing this anymore, just throw it to the wall. And I moved completely away from the wall. These
Yep.
were all true things.
That was kind of nice.
And before that, I actually liked playing volleyball, but then, you know, these people that have skill in playing volleyball, like, get all serious about it. And, and then the person without skill that just enjoyed it doesn't enjoy it anymore.
So those are the things that I looked for in an ideal mate.
I actually had not, I never made any lists about what kind of a person that I would want to marry. I knew that that person had to be a Christian, and that needed to be, that the spiritual part needed to be the number one thing, because in high school I had dated a Jewish guy, and we professed our high schoolish age love to each other, but I told him, I said, this isn't going anywhere unless you would, you know, become a Christian. And he said, well, I'm not going to become a Christian, and so we broke up, and that was that. However, we are good friends now, and in fact, he is, that my friend from high school, Rob, is a good friend of David's as well, and we have continued our friendship over the years of, and I've continued to pray for Rob all these years.
We spent time together this summer because he lives in Orlando, and so when we were down there for the National Youth Gathering, we were able to spend an evening with Rob and his family, and his mom was in town, so it's kind of nice for Mary Jo to be able to do a reconnect with Marty as well, and we just had a delightful evening.
And then Michael was in town, and we met
That's right.
Michael and Jill when
and
they
their
were
kids.
in Hong Kong.
Yeah,
when
So,
we went there.
it was
So-
kind of a grand reunion, and we got to be a part of that, and it was really a lot of fun. It was very special to be able to do that. Rob lost his first wife to cancer
2000.
in 2000. Yeah.
August of 2000.
So there's an empathy there with what our journey is right now as well. So
Except that we have the Christ part and the spiritual part, and Rob never had that. And so it's kind of neat to have him read our updates, because they are so hope-filled and trust-filled, and he struggled for either 3 or 5 years, I can't remember how many years, with his wife's breast cancer, and didn't have that hope and trust part. So he kind of, we purposefully keep him in a loop too,
yeah.
as another way of outreaching through our mess.
Yeah.
So, okay, I didn't have anything other than my spouse needed to be a Christian, and that was going to be the main thing. Of course, it helped that he was mighty cute, and he was athletic, and I liked to watch him at every game or whatever that he played, and I was at all of his musical things that I was there for. But I was the cheerer.
And the grand cheerleader she is.
Go David. Go kids.
Okay. Let's see. Were there any obstacles to your dating or any part of that
Yeah.
journey of your dating
Sure.
or marriage?
Sure. The biggest obstacle was simply the fact that after Mary Jo's sophomore year, she had to transfer to another college, and chose to go to Concordia River Forest. And yeah, that did that posed some challenges and some tension, if you will, on the relationship, just because we weren't together so often.
Hardly ever, in fact.
At the conclusion of my junior, Mary Jo's sophomore year, we drove up to Ludington, and we spent a long weekend. It seems to me, something like that, in Ludington, and I put her on the bus,
Greyhound bus. To Chicago.
from Ludington to Chicago, because she was going to stay with Karen Gaelic
And live with them
for
in
the
Chicago
summer.
for the summer.
and find a job and so on. And yeah, that was difficult. That was very difficult.
You cried.
I did.
Again. That's all right. That was probably the hardest part, was after our sophomore year, which is when we knew that, after my sophomore year, his junior year, when we knew that we loved each other, we never were in the same city again for together to continue building our relationship. So for 2 full years, it was definitely a long distance relationship. Now at Christmas we were always together.
And we spent probably a week plus together in the summer, at the end of the summer,
At the end of the summer,
up
right?
in Wausau. That's Jim and Audrey had come back to the States and stayed up in Wausau then at the homestead,
House.
at the Wausau house. And so we had blocks of time together, but I think Mary Jo came back to Ann Arbor once or twice,
I didn't
to
have
visit
any
me.
car. I didn't have any
Yeah.
way to get there.
and I probably got to River Forest like maybe 3 or 4 times per year. So we pretty much had to depend on telephone calls and letters for the most part.
We sent some audio tapes.
Yeah, we did.
Sent some
I did.
tapes back and forth.
I had a church job, particularly my senior year. I had a church job and helped out with the choir and so on. And I would take my tape recorder with me and make tapes while I was driving, and just kind of ramble on a little bit. So that was another way that we stayed in contact with each other. But yeah, it was a challenge. It really was to be so far apart and not be able to be together. But we did it. We survived. We communicated, and
Sometimes when David would come down to River Forest when I was there, I had to work. I worked 40 hours a week my last 2 years of college, and so sometimes we would. When he came down, I had to work 8 hours. I had a house cleaning job, and I worked 8 hours on Saturday. So he would work. I would ask the people that I worked for if they had anything for David to do, and on at least 1 or 2 occasions.
yeah.
On at least 2
probably.
occasions, David came down and washed windows for those 8 hours while I cleaned the inside of their house. So we got to see each other kind of, and then see each other on Sunday, and then he'd leave Sunday evening.
It was always a little bit of a difficulty in getting back together again, and reconnecting and reestablishing, since we became quite used to our own way of
Routine.
routines and thinking and talking and caring, and again, that provided some challenge as far as you spend a weekend together and finally by Sunday you kind of warm up to each other again and are feeling good about that, and then you got to leave. I had to leave again back for Ann Arbor.
It felt wrenching
Yeah.
when you left every single time. And it took several hours at the beginning of those weekends. It took several hours to get used to being
Mhm.
together again and not having it be stiff, I guess is a good way to call it.
The challenge grew the year after that, because Mary Jo's senior year was the year I was in grad school, and
You were so busy.
I was so busy because I had a regular job, a paid position at a church in Manchester, Michigan, as the organist and choir director, and I had to be there pretty much every week. I got a sub probably a couple times, but again, it had its challenges and so on. The nice thing was that when Mary Jo came to town a couple times that year, yeah,
I remember that.
I remember once she came in the fall, and once she came
I only remember
probably
coming when you
maybe
made
early
spaghetti.
summer or something like that. I don't know all the details, but I think you came at Christmas time, and then you came to Ann Arbor, and then after Christmas was over, we ended up going up to Ludington or something like
Maybe.
that. And the place where I was the organist and choir director had a huge parsonage. This is the United Church of Christ, and so they said anytime you want to stay overnight, there's a room for you. And if Mary Jo ever comes up, we have a room for her too. And so they were very gracious in encouraging us and encouraging our relationship when we were able to take advantage of that. That year ended with kind of a bang. We made our wedding plans for getting married, and again, I did not finish grad school until the summer. 1 week before the wedding,
7 days.
7 days before the wedding, I did my master's recital at Michigan, and Mary Jo had gotten there somehow. I don't know.
I know I came up with Eunice and Bob because
They
they lived
came
in
too?
Chicago. Well, I lived with
Okay,
them and they
all
came
right.
for
They
your
came for the recital too. So they came to Ann Arbor for my recital, and Mary Jo was there, and that's when we finally got together again,
Right, that
pretty
was-
much permanently,
Right.
1 week before the wedding, and did the recital, and Eunice and Bob and Mom and Dad and Christy came down from Ludington as well, and they were there for the recital. They were there for the reception after the recital at Marilyn Mason's house. And then they all went their separate ways, Eunice and Bob back to Chicago, and Mom and Dad back to Ludington. The story there is that on the way back to Ludington, they didn't leave until 10 o'clock at night probably. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, they got probably about as, Mom and Dad got as far as Reed City, which is about an hour away from Ludington. And Dad said, there's no way that we're going to get back with the gas that we've got left. And so they pulled into a gas station, and they sat in the car for about 3 hours at the gas station, not going anywhere, just kind of dozing, until a police car finally came by and noticed them in the gas station parking lot. And they said, "What's the problem here? We're going to Ludington, and well, we're going to run out of gas. We'll never make it, and there's no gas stations between here and Ludington that are going to be open. So we just figured we might as well just stay put and not go anywhere." So the policeman.
Wait until the gas station opened in the
Yep.
morning?
Yep. So the policeman called the gas station owner and said, "Hey, got this guy down here, and he needs some gas in order to get over to Ludington and all that." So the gas station owner came in the middle of the night and filled the car up. They filled it up, whatever. Got enough gas to get back to Ludington that night.
Holy cow.
And it was church the next morning, so Dad got probably about 2 hours of sleep, and it was,
I don't remember any of
yeah, that was part of the story. I haven't talked to Mom about that for a long time,
that. Wow.
but I remember Dad telling me about that on the way back. So Mary Jo and I stayed for church then on Sunday morning and stayed at the parsonage overnight in Manchester, and then I went to church the next morning, and I played for the service, and that was my last Sunday. And we were sent off by the choir and the pastor and his wife, Bob and Diana McFarland.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Bob.
Yep. And they had two kids, and they were big time into Star Wars because that was Star Wars era. So they sent us off. We drove up to Ludington, and we stayed for a day or two, and then we hopped on the ferry, and we took the car ferry across to Manitowoc and drove over to Wausau, and then we did all of our final planning and preparation for the wedding, which was just a couple of days later.
And my mom, I don't remember all the details about them, but they had come in from Venezuela. Mom and Dad and Rachel, Lisa, and Lori.
That's right.
And they came in from Venezuela. And so Mom was the one that was in charge of finding us all places to stay in Wausau, because I didn't know the Wausau people. It's very odd to go and get married in a place that you've never lived and be surrounded by people that you don't. I mean, we knew some of the relatives, but that was all. So Erin is typing her fingers to the bone. Are you caught up?
I think so. It was your Granny's. What was you said? It was her job to what?
Find places for us to stay. I stayed with June and Chuck.
Uh-huh.
They had a little that little breezeway between the garage and the main part of the
Is that where you
house,
slept?
and they had a hide-a-bed there, and so they pulled the hide-a-bed out for me, and that's where I stayed
Really?
and slept. Yeah.
Okay. And I stayed wherever Mom and Dad were staying.
Mm-hmm.
But that was at somebody's house. Maybe it was like a whole floor of a house that was for our family, because I remember Rachel, Lisa, and Lori were there, and Mom, and that's where I was. And actually, okay, well, you guys were around. Erin and Erica were around. No,
Yeah.
Erica was?
Yeah.
Erica was a baby.
Mm-hmm. Because
we were
we
married.
had visited.
When were you
Little
born?
Rock.
Oh, yeah, because I'm 29, so.
We visited
Yeah.
Little Rock
So you were a baby, so
during
you were 1 year
during
old.
an Easter break, and that was your baptism,
Uh-huh.
as I recall. Or no, it wasn't
We
Easter.
went down for baptism.
We went down for your baptism, and that was probably what
That was
August.
the end of August, yeah.
At the end of August,
Yeah.
right? So that was probably my senior year, or maybe grad school year or something like that. But anyway,
That would be your
Well,
grad
of
school
course you
year.
would. With your
yeah,
godparents.
yeah.
Mhm.
hmm
Yeah, we could go off on a whole tangent of the baptism, Erica's baptism, and those fun and games. But, yeah.
Okay.
Then, Erin, did you already do before how the proposal? How we
No.
proposed?
Oh, yeah.
We could
Wait,
go
wait.
there.
Wait, I don't know, you
Well, I
wanna
don't know.
ask
Erin
loud
is
enough?
the master
Yeah.
interviewer. I was just wondering if I missed that.
No, we haven't gotten to that one yet, but we can.
Oh, you
we can
have it in
jump
your
back
list?
to that.
Okay.
Of course, I had that in my list. How can we skip the proposal? We can go ahead and do that now.
Okay, well, first, before we get to the proposal, Becky and Keith's first introduction to the family and David's introduction to the family overlapped. They were the new guys, and in fact, and I don't want to take any wind out of the sails of Becky and Keith, but I believe that we were proposed to within the same several months. Like, that was all, Keith was new to the family, and he proposed to Becky. David was new to the family, and he proposed to me, and we grew up, I mean, we went through all our beginnings kind of together, because Becky and Keith were in Chicago, and that's where I was. And so when David would come to town, did you ever stay with them?
Yeah. hmm
You would stay with Becky and Keith, because they lived, maybe 4 blocks from campus. But one of the first visits to the extended family in Wausau and Milwaukee included both you and Keith kind of as the newcomers
Although I
to the
didn't,
family.
I did not go to the Milwaukee.
Oh, you weren't at the
event.
Milwaukee event?
I
That was
I missed Roots.
you missed Roots. Lori and her infamous Roots.
We
were
played
playing
charades,
Charades.
and Lori got the
It
word,
was
the
the title
book,
of a book.
Roots. And so she laid down on the floor,
And
on her
she's-
back, and she's got her legs up in the air.
And she's going like this. And nobody could figure it out. And there's little Lori. I mean, Lori was, I don't know how
Gangly,
old.
you know,
But
it was
she was
a
like
gangly
10,
little girl,
maybe 11. And she's laying on her back. She desperately wanted to play the game with all of us big kids. But that was in Milwaukee, and that was one of the summers. That was Keith's first introduction to the family. And my first time that I ever had White Castle. I don't know why I thought of that, but Keith was with me, and he wanted White Castle. So anyway, okay, so proposal. That would have been at Christmas time, a year and a half before our wedding. And I remember somebody in the family, maybe it was Mom, maybe somebody else, you shouldn't have such a long engagement. It's like, we already know we're getting married. Why not be engaged? But when we were up in Wausau, we decided that we wanted to get our rings from the same place that Grammy and Granddad got theirs, because they were married in Wausau also. No, they weren't. They were married in Milwaukee. But Dad got his rings at Jim Kreshock's
Mm-hmm.
jeweler in Wausau. And so we went to Jim Kreshock's and we picked out our rings. But that was before I was proposed to. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. That's
Because
correct.
you said that we just wanted to go and look at rings, and we picked them out. We didn't buy them at the time, but we picked them out so that he was knowing what I would want. So that Christmas, I was quite sick, having worked very hard in the school year and had so many papers due that I stayed up really, really late before it was Christmas vacation time. And this was when Dad was on campus with me at Concordia River Forest. And so we drove up together because Dad's mom and the kids were living in Wausau, and I was at school at River Forest. But anyway, you want to tell it, because I was just the observer and
Yeah, pretty much.
the yes-sayer.
It was kind of a downhill slide, not only for Mary Jo, but Dad got sick, and there was a bunch of people that were sick, because Christmas Eve came and Christmas Day. Mom and I were the only ones that went to church on Christmas Day, because no one else was.
Grammy Mom.
Yeah, Grammy Mom. Were the only two that were able to do it, and I chipped in and helped out by singing in the choir that morning as well. But Christmas Eve, we all went to church, and we came back. I wanted to walk back from church, but it was snowing,
And I was sick. I
it
was
was
running
like-
a fever of 100 and
It
whatever.
was like 25 degrees out. Mary Jo was running a fever.
I was shivering.
And I said,
shaking.
fine, then so we'll drive in the car. And then as soon as we got out of the car, back at the house,
After Christmas Eve service.
after the Christmas Eve service, I pulled Mary Jo aside, and it was kind of romantic when it gets down to it, because it was snowing very gently, and it was
But I
just
was
kind
sick.
of cool and crisp and all that. And I said, well, we'll make this short and sweet, but I want to formally ask you to marry.
And we were standing, if I recall, is there a step? We were standing
Well,
on
it
a
was
step.
in the back driveway, back part of the house,
Right.
and
And I was standing outside the door, and I looked at him with feverish eyes, wanting to go in and lay down because my
yes,
head was
leave me
pounding.
alone.
And so I said, yes, now take me inside.
Take me inside. Let me go to bed.
I have to lay down.
I'm gonna be sick.
No, it was flu. It was some kind of, I
Yeah.
had some fever and whatever, and I wasn't gonna like throw up, but so I said, yes, take me inside.
I thought that was just an opportune time. She couldn't say no because I was holding her captive outside. So you say yes.
And he
or
was
else.
practically holding me up because I was so sick. But that was our wonderful proposal. Now, you told me that the day before or at some time prior about talking to Dad.
Yeah,
Tell
Did-
the camera.
I did. I think.
When?
Oh, I think I did. I don't remember.
I thought you did.
I remember more talking to my dad about it because the first thing that came out of his mouth was, "Are you sure that's okay that you can get into the seminary if you're engaged or married?" I said, "Yes, it's the rules.
do that
Times have changed a little bit since you were at the seminary." So, yeah, I think I did. I think I asked Jim, and I said I would like the privilege of having Mary Jo be my wife. He said yes, and I don't remember if it was just Jim or if Audrey was there too. I have a sense that it was just Jim.
We could ask him. He
Yeah,
might remember.
yeah, he might remember. So, and I did that prior to asking Mary Jo as well.
This is
My
always a
dad,
good
I
thing.
did it after I had already proposed.
Oh,
Because
really?
we drove over from Wausau, we drove over to Green Bay to Lois and Arden's, and we spent some time there with them as well. Over Christmas too. So.
Yeah.
So that's the story of our engagement.
So how long after you had met were you engaged? If this was a year, you were engaged for a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
Probably about a year and a half after we started dating.
Right.
Okay.
Because we started
Okay,
dating
so it
at
was
the
a
beginning.
3-year period.
Yeah.
Yes, at the
Okay.
beginning of my sophomore year.
Maybe like
Is
more
when-
like a year and a quarter, a year and 3 months after we had started dating. And I had already given Mary Jo her promise ring, the
Yes.
Star Sapphire. And that was at the end of Mary Jo's sophomore year, my junior year.
Right before I left, before we were separated for the rest of the time until we got married.
Yeah.
So, do you want to hear any of our promise ring story? It's a short. He took my room. He went with my roommate to get my ring
Karen Galick
Karen
and
Galick.
Gordy Cummings drove, and
because he had a car.
I took Karen with me the first time in order to pick the ring out, and she said, "Yep, that's a good ring. She'll like that," and so on. And then we went to pick it up, and Gordy was with me at that time, and we picked the ring up, and we were walking down the walkway of the mall, and Karen turns to me.
Karen's okay. Well, never mind. All of our family knows Karen.
Yeah. Karen turns to me and slugs me in the gut. I mean, this is not just a tap. She slugs me in the gut, and I kind of bend over, double over a little bit, and I got the wind knocked out of me. And she says in the loudest voice possible, without screaming,
In the mall.
"No, I'm not going to have your baby." What?
She was always a jokester. She was also athletic, which is why her slug in the gut
It
knocked the
hurt,
wind out of him.
And Gordy's there, and he didn't see her hit me in the gut, and he says, "What's wrong?" I said, "She hit me." She hit me, and he says, "Come on," and we walk a little bit further, and she just turned and just turned and wailed on him and slugged him in the gut too, and he's doubled over. Oh, okay, I believe you, but she hit you before, you know. Yeah, so that's the day that we picked up, that I picked up
My promise
the
ring,
promise ring.
Right there. That was our promise, that we were going to get married. Even though we were far away, one in Illinois and one in Michigan. Ah, yes. The fun.
Let's see. How about let's have a little change of pace. Aunt Mary Jo, what even now or then you can do either one. You can look over the whole span of your relationship. What about David makes your heart race?
Oh my. Okay, then now, okay. It was that smile right there, that one, the one that was on camera. It's always been his smile, because when he looks at me and he smiles and he's only looking at me, and he has a certain smile, and the smile says, I love you. And it has all the time. From the very beginning. Because he could be playing in a basketball game in the gym not at seminary, at Ann Arbor.
Yeah, or church.
Or whatever, and he would turn and he'd catch my eye for the splittest second and give me that smile. There's no other smile. He's never smiled that smile for any other person. And that gets my heart racing. And that smile has accompanied many, many different things. Sometimes he's preaching up in front and I can, he'll turn and smile at me. And nowadays, that's a big part of how he says he loves me. Besides with his mouth, but in words.
As you wish.
Oh yeah. Those don't, your movie quotes don't make me, well, they do get my heart racing sometimes, because he has some different little movie quotes that he says, where in the movie it essentially meant I love you, such as you wish from The Princess Bride. And so throughout the years, as sometimes he'll surprise me and we'll be saying something and he'll go, as you wish. And I know what he's really telling me is he loves me. But also, I always, and this isn't like heart racing, like romantic, but I always love to watch him play sports. I love to watch him play volleyball in the church during the winter at St. Mark, or St. John. Love to watch him play softball. Love to watch him play basketball. Just watching his athletic body, jump and shoot and run and, oh yeah, running too. When he goes jogging or running, it's his particular brand of running. So, but always, it's the smile. I can't believe it, you did it right there on the camera. And that was unprompted. I think it's your turn.
Am I supposed to talk now?
Yeah.
I don't have that one thing that I can go to as far as making my heart race. I think it's more of a cumulative effect. Just the support for ministry and involvement in my ministry throughout the years. Whether it's youth group or worship or ringing a handbell or turning pages. That's always been.
to that because my love language is spending time with you.
Yeah.
And so, even back in college, it didn't matter what he was doing, except when it was a library date and he was really and truly studying. But it didn't matter what he was doing. If I could just be in the same room or close by and watching, to me, that was very, very, very fulfilling. And kind of unbeknownst to me, it was also very, David was taking that as very supportive of him. And it's true, because in the first years in all the years of seminary and the first years of marriage, I went to every church service. I didn't just go to one service. Well, we only had one car, so if he was driving to church, I was driving with him. And so we spent massive numbers of hours together at church, but even though we were together, we were kind of apart. So I've always loved just to be
Yeah,
in
and
proximity.
in the last 3 years since cancer and all that, just the devotion and care.
Still like to spend time with you. Even if you're upstairs in your squid suit, which we have to get on film, by the way. We do have to get the squid suit on film because the squid suit's brand new. Got it yesterday. So,
It's almost like more of a boa constrictor suit.
ooh, actually that's true. It is a constrictor suit.
The lymph boa.
Boa?
The lymph boa. Except we've already called it a squid suit, so I'm thinking in my mind it will never unbecome the squid suit. But so all the different therapy and everything, I'm always there. Unless I'm down in the kitchen doing something with food. In which case I'm not there. But you know what he does for me? Because he knows that I like to be with him. He actually on occasion will, if I'm in the kitchen doing food preparation and everything, he will on occasion just come and read or do whatever he's doing and sit in the kitchen in a very uncomfortable chair. And I'll be like looking over and thoroughly enjoying the fact that he's in the same room as I am, but kind of wondering why he's there because, you know, the things that he would be doing would be in a different place in the house. And then I realize that he's there because he loves me, not because he needs to be there, but because I like him there. So that's pretty fun.
And let's hear it for cell phones and text messaging too, which we use an awful lot.
In the
Just
last year.
in the middle of the day, just hey, love you, you know, that's all. But just those little pick-me-ups are just really good and really important. Staying connected.
And I might add to all of this that going back and thinking about those beginning years and thinking about it in the perspective of here and now with adult children and cancer growling at us pretty continuously, that I love David more and more each day and each month that passes, and that's hard to imagine and hard to think about because I remember thinking about that when I was newly married, you know, in the first 5 years, let's say, thinking, oh, I love him, you know, how can this get any better? And you know, it has.
The depth of partnership.
It's a whole different love,
Yeah.
though, especially now that most of the intimate part can't happen because of
Well, let's call
how
it
you feel.
the physically
The
intimate part.
yeah.
And so now it's a different kind of intimacy than it ever has been before. But just as powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yepper. And necessary. It's necessary for both of our hearts to adjust and find new ways to love. Right?
Yeah.
With the movie quote? What's your recent one?
Sense and Sensibility.
Nope.
No?
Pride and Prejudice.
Ah, yeah, sorry, Pride and Prejudice. Yeah.
At the very end.
Where? Darcy calls.
What's her name?
What's her
Elizabeth?
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Darcy. Do you love me? Yes, I do, Mrs. Darcy. Don't call me Mrs. Darcy. And he says, no, that's how I say I love you.
So sometimes I get text messages that say, how are you, Mrs. Reimann? And that's all. And I know that he's saying I love you in the middle of my day. All right, Erin, back to you. You got more questions for us?
Mm-hmm.
Should get the camera and pan it around.
Pan.
Yeah, do a pan of the
Do a
Christmas tree.
Do a
and-
slow pan. Second cousin to Chopin.
I'll do a slow pan.
And you can get the babykins too.
Oh wait, I guess I should be seeing what I'm doing here.
You might be panning above it.
Standing by my ceiling. Okay. There is Savannah, who's trying to be quiet while we interview. And here is the interviewer and her laptop. Yes. A piano.
Yes, perhaps not
Christmas tree that they have not had time
Hide
to decorate
tissues.
fully, but it has
future
pretty lights and their tree topper angel.
No. Just remember, note to self, have tissues around for future interviews. I
That's
suspect it
true.
would be
This will be
a
emotional.
touching topic regardless.
Okay, so we have play to the circuit.
Here we are again.
And there is the happy
Interviewees.
couple.
This is 2007.
It's Christmas
December what?
2007.
December-
Well, yes, December 8th.
December the 8th,
December the 8th.
day after Pearl Harbor.
Well,
Your mom's
Anniversary.
birthday was yesterday.
Mom was born on December the 7th.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you
I
for the
guess I
pan
should've-
around.
yes, and here I am. Hi.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes.
The camera operator extraordinaire.
That was not a chin monkey.
Yeah. Well, it was almost, she was half sideways. But
I probably looked really strange.
I have to say, it's really cool because we got Erin and Erica all to ourselves with little Miss Savannah for a whole weekend because of this. This was awesome. It
Yep.
was quite the treat to be able to
true.
have you guys here with us. So,
Okay, I have a few more. Not too many. Let's see. Well, we'll switch and do a little different tack. What, if anything, do you recall of the other Lidkey girls' romances? As in the one they ended up with, not the previous ones.
oh, I don't even
But like,
know.
do you
any
have any
previous
recollection
people.
of any of them with as they were going through and getting married? Have any stories that you recall?
Probably going to be you with Debbie and Tony a little bit.
Oh yeah, I have all
And-
kinds
and,
of memories of their
You know, I
life.
was around with
Uncle.
Becky and Keith a little bit, but
Mm.
as far as the rest of the Sibs
Mm-hmm.
are concerned, that was really, they were in St. Louis and we were, elsewhere, so
Cleveland.
really didn't know a whole lot about it. Of course, the wedding day itself was always memorable because of the initiation into the brother-in-law club
Oh,
for
yes.
everybody. But that's really not, the part of the pre-wedding type stuff that you're asking about.
I remember Debbie and Tony's wedding, and I remember meeting Tony for the first time, and oh my goodness, the first time we ever met him, of course his hair was a little longer than it is now and nowadays, but we met him at the Pink House in St. Louis when we were staying there for one whole summer, and I was 14, I believe, and he came for just several days, and we all met him. I don't know how old that would have made them. They were in college at some point in college, and we were home on furlough for the summer. And the biggest memory thing was we had this huge water fight. I mean, this was a water fight to end all water fights, and it was an inside the house and outside of the house. And I remember Tony grabbing the hose with the spray thingy on it, and some of us had run in the house because surely nobody would throw water on us in the house. And so Tony has the hose and he's spraying it in through the windows. And I remember Granddad was like, "Don't you put water in the house!" And I remember we all kind of got chewed out for that. I think Tony included. But anyway, you know, so some of those things stand out in my mind. But it was really the water fight that stood out. I don't know what else. We were running all over the yard and everywhere. But then a couple years later, for Debbie and Tony's wedding, they got married in Hong Kong, and I remember the wedding and their wonderful punch and cake and everything afterwards. But I remember going to the pool and playing with Tony because I was, let's see, if that was that summer, it was probably the next summer. I was 14, I was 15? No, I think I was 16, so I think it was 2 summers later, but I don't know. What do I know as a kid? And so at the pool at the LRC, we were all playing, and Tony was tossing the sisters, Rachel, Lisa, Lori, and myself one way out, off and another, and we just had a grand old time at the pool. So I remember meeting this new brother-in-law, the very first of the brother-in-laws, and we welcomed him in like a brother. We had never had any brothers, and it was just pure fun. And then of course Debbie and Tony, during my breaks, when we were in college, and David and I were meeting, because I had no family in the United States other than Becky and Debbie, we would go, well, the one Easter that we took a Greyhound bus down to Little Rock.
We got a ride to Memphis with someone from school, and then we took the Greyhound from Memphis to Little Rock.
Is that when we tried to stop in and see Rob?
Perhaps, yeah, I think so.
Because he was at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Did we see him? Did he come
No.
to the bus?
Mm-mm.
We couldn't coordinate that,
No.
but yeah. Anyway, so then we went down and we spent all of Easter break. We spent that whole week of spring break down at Debbie and Tony's, and that was really neat because it was so nice and hot down there. I remember we were getting a tan and hanging out. We would sunbathe during the day, and this was your very first Chinese meal at Debbie and Tony's house. And Debbie made I don't know what, maybe fried rice.
I think it was fried rice. Yeah.
Fried rice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, she made fried rice and gave David chopsticks. Just like, I mean, that was normal. All you get is chopsticks in your bowl, and David.
My hand cramped up halfway through the meal.
Yeah, but it was you either use it and learn, or you don't eat.
Yeah.
And he used it and learned, and we've been doing the very same thing for every guest at our house since. Here, it's Chinese food. If it's Chinese food, it's chopsticks or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So that was David's initiation into the Chinese part of us.
I don't have a whole lot of memories specifically from Becky and Keith prior to their wedding.
You played organ for their
Well, I
wedding.
played organ for the wedding. I was going to get to that, but you know, I know that they held a couple of parties. One party, I don't know, and I was there like around Christmas time, and there was another party that they held, and there's, you know, social work people and things like that, because they were both involved in social work, and you know, that's about it. I don't not
Keith
much
lived
more
in a
than
great
that.
big house.
Yeah,
Was the party at that house?
yeah, I believe so.
So it was before they
That
were
was
married?
Keith and Dominic was one of his roommates, I believe. Something like that, and you know, maybe there was another guy that was. So it was a bunch of guys that were in a house together.
A big old house.
Yeah, and then the marriage itself, and that was probably my real first initiation into the Litke family as far as the craziness that goes on, and understanding Audrey and how to deal with Audrey. just kind of like the kind of the scurrying and got to get this done, and so on, and just learning to be helpful and plugging in and chipping in and all that on the day of the wedding and so on. Wedding held at Grace Lutheran, right next to the Concordia campus.
And I was staying at Shively's at the time,
Right.
so
Yeah. So we had so we kind of had a good base of operations for the wedding. I came for the wedding. I played the wedding, and I had to leave because I had to be back to play for my church then the next day.
to Michigan.
To
So you were there
Michigan,
for.
yeah.
I remember that. It was
Yeah.
hard for you to leave because I wanted to.
Yeah, I was already in grad school and had to get back, and you wanted me to stay, and I couldn't do it, and so I had to kind of come on in, play, and leave, and that. So
And I had to go back to the party without you, and it was like, oh.
yeah, I was only able to stay for a little while.
Mhm.
So that's pretty much the pre-wedding up to the wedding memories that we have on that.
Back in the day.
Mhm.
But without a doubt, David and Keith and Tony of the brother-in-laws,
We bonded quite well.
because you and Keith came
Quite
in at the
deeply.
same time.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Came into the family.
Yeah.
And so
Becky and
then
Keith got
Tony
married
was
a
really
year
glad.
ahead of us, so they were engaged for like 6 months and then got married, and we were engaged for a year and a half and got married. And then when Becky and Keith moved to St. Louis too, we spent a lot of time with Becky and Keith, and that was very good as far as building our relationship
Mhm.
is concerned. And we spent some significant time with Tony and Debbie as well.
Mhm.
Not quite as much as with Becky and Keith, but
But we
still.
went down for holidays, and we went
Yeah.
to Little Rock. We went to
we went to New Orleans.
New Orleans. In
a
fact, we
couple
went to New
times.
Orleans with Becky and Keith and their very stinky Kanishka dog who was farting up a storm in the car. I don't know whose car we were in,
That
but
was
there
our
were
car.
4 seats in the
That
car,
was
and there
ours.
were 4 people
Yeah, that
plus
was-
Kanishka in
yeah.
the middle. And that dog farted up the whole way to.
We went down.
Dog
to-
farts are awful.
We went down to New Orleans a second time over like Thanksgiving or something like that, and it
We had Kim
snowed.
with us
And I probably had Kim, and we also took like
because Adam was born. too.
Lori, or we took Lisa, or somebody like that, I believe, as well, as I recall, and spent kind of a long holiday type weekend down there. We had no heat going down because the heater core broke in the car
That's
the
right.
day before we left, and so we had to bundle up with blankets and everything like that in order to get down there because it was snowy in St. Louis. Since Tony worked at Napa, he was able to get us the heater
yeah, he
core
fixed
part and replaced it for us. So that got that taken care of. It's a long ways to go to get a part to replace for your car,
Yeah.
but still worked out pretty well. And spent some time with them down in the French Quarter and having dinner and all kinds of good stuff.
And
like
they gave us our first taste of crawfish.
that. Crawfish, yep.
Big old. We went to a restaurant and they dumped a great big old bowl of crawfish on the middle of the newspaper in the middle of the table, and we
Shuck
ate.
'em, suck 'em, and eat 'em raw, or whatever it was.
Suck 'em, and pitch 'em.
I don't know, whatever it was. So
Suck 'em, and pitch 'em.
yeah, I
Because you
don't know.
pitch the skins on the floor? I don't know.
I don't know.
See, we need Debbie and Tony to corroborate some of these things, and Becky and Keith to tell us when they.
Okay, we're filming.
Are you reload it?
Yes, we loaded it last night.
Okay.
All together now then.
Are you starting?
Record. Okay.
Don't touch anything. Just hold it.
Oh yeah.
Here.
You need to get further away though.
Texas pillow. Try that.
It's not long enough.
Start.
Your right configuration.
bring up the Noah's Ark pillow.
Oh, the big long thingy. That's fine. Right now they're going to do their song.
I got now.
Aaron and Erica singing for
Okay.
Dad's new.
This is my $7,000 new toy. Thank you very much.
Also
Yay.
known as the squid pants or
Or-
the Ika pants
Or
or
Kraken.
the
Or
boa
Kraken.
constrictor. Oh, the Kraken or the boa constrictor pants or the ski pants. Did I say that?
And this is an ode to the lympho.
Lympho pants.
Lympho
Lympho
pants.
pants.
Lymphomaniac.
To lympho pants.
It's like kleptomaniac.
I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor.
I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor. I'm being swallowed by a boa constrictor.
Constrictor.
And I don't like it very much. Oh no, he swallowed my toe, he swallowed my toe. Oh gee, he's up to my knee, he's up to my knee. Oh fiddle, he swallowed my middle, he swallowed my middle. Oh heck, he's up to my neck, he's up to my neck. Oh dread, he swallowed my...
This is Sunday after church. Here, hand it over to me. This is Sunday after church. See, we're all in our nice clothes still, but Aaron and Erica have come to visit and brought Savannah. Of course, she's downstairs sleeping under the Christmas tree. But he is doing his morning decompression or compression
Yeah.
or
Yeah, that's
whatever.
Accurate.
It's compression.
Constriction.
Construction.
Yes. Luckily, it does not go past his middle.
Yes.
We're gonna call the boa Kraken,
Kraken.
The boa kraken.
even though it's mixing your metaphors. That's okay.
Blind.
So when he says I'm going upstairs to get Kraken.
There's a verb you can use.
Yes. This is good. This is the one we've been looking
Yeah.
Are you
for.
allowed to be funny like that?
I can do it. On occasion. Light and silly.
Okay.
Go
Alright.
Okay,
to the
yes,
bank.
I need to pack.
We'll be back